Hello, welcome to Learning Tech 101. My name is Renique, and today what we're going to be demonstrating is how to install Ubuntu onto VMware Workstation Player. To be able to do this, you're going to need two things. You're going to need the VMware Workstation Player software, and then you're also going to need the Ubuntu operating system software. We'll go ahead and show you where to be able to get both from. So when you open your browser, you go to the VMware.com website, and then under Products, down below Desktop Hypervisor, you're going to find Workstation Player. So once you click here, then you'll be able to see the download for free button, and that's where you're going to be able to go and download the software. So you'll download the software and install it. And then when you're for the operating system, you're going to go to the Ubuntu.com website. And then under downloads, you'll see Ubuntu Desktop. So you'll go ahead, click on that, and then you're going to see that there's two versions of Ubuntu. So you have your LTS long-term support version, and you have the non-LTS version. So the LTS version, what that means is that you're getting support. That's updates for maintenance and security for the next 5 years for free. Whereas the non-LTS version, you do get support for security and maintenance, but it's only for the next 9 months. So you want to go, most times you're going to end up going with the long-term support. So you click on the download and then now be able to download the ISO image file for Ubuntu. Now, once you're ready to go ahead and you have the VMware Workstation Player software installed, you'll be ready to go ahead and start to create your first virtual machine. So once you bring up the software, you go to create new virtual machine. And then you have two options of how to be able to install the software or the operating system. So you can either install it after you create the virtual machine. So you do all the settings that you want for your virtual machine and then be able to install it that way. So usually when you do it that way, you're going to basically be trying to boot it from that ISO image and have it go ahead and run through the installation of the operating system. The other way is to actually just have it do the installation soon as right after you've done all the configurations that you want for your virtual machine. So we're going to go ahead and do where we're going to install it right as we're doing the creation of the virtual machine. So to do this, you're going to browse to wherever you have the ISO image saved. So you go to browse, and wherever you saved it at, that's where you're going to go to click on that file and then hit open. Now it's going to detect that this is a Ubuntu operating system that you're looking to install. So once you go ahead and click next, fill in some of this information. So put a name, username, password. Go ahead, click next. And then you're going to choose a name for your virtual machine. So by default, it's usually going to come up with whatever the operating system is. So Ubuntu 64-bit. So I'm fine with that. So I'll just leave that as is. Now you're going to want to choose where you want to save the virtual machine files at. So you click on browse and then you go to wherever you're choosing to actually save this to. Now, once you've chosen your location, go ahead and click next. And then this is where you're going to start to set up the hard drive size that you want for the virtual machine. Now, the thing about this is you're going to want to make sure that you are at least doing the recommended minimum requirements to be able to install that operating system. So if we went back over to the Ubuntu website, it'll let you know recommended system requirements. So 2 gig, two core processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 25 gigs of hard drive space. So we're going to go ahead and make this 25. Now you have the option of either creating one single disk or having this split between multiple disks. Now, when you split between the multiple disks, it's a lot easier to move around. So if you want to migrate this to another machine, it's a lot easier when they're in multiple files rather than in one large file, especially if you're making this virtual machine like bigger than the recommended. So the ideal way you would want to do is just break it up into the multiple files. So we go ahead and click next. Now this is where it's showing you everything about your setup. So 25 gigs split. 4 gigs of RAM, network adapters using NAT, um, 2 processor cores. Now, if you want to start to change some of this, all you got to do is click on the customize hardware. And this is where you're going to be able to make some adjustments. So let's say we want to drop this down to 2 gigs of RAM. So we'll go with the 2 gigs of RAM and we want to just do one processor. So change this to one. And we could also change how our network adapter is going to be configured. So currently it's set for NAT. So what that means is it's going to create its own internal, your virtual environments create its own internal network, and then it's going to use NAT for communicating outside of this, to anything outside of the virtual network. So use your network adapter to convert it into an IP address, or use the IP address of your host machine to be able to communicate with anything outside of this. You can also use the bridge. So if you use the bridge, what this ends up doing is it pulls an IP address and shows as if it's a part of your network. So whatever your network is, whether you're doing this at home or at work or whatever, it's going to pull an IP address as if it's part of that. So it'll show up as a system on that network as well. So however way you want to configure it, you can use the bridge or you can use the NAT. Those are the two most common ways. So I'm going to stick with the NAT. So we'll go ahead and hit close. So now everything configuration wise is how I want it. So we'll go ahead and hit finish. And then it's going to start getting ready to boot into and create the virtual machine. So basically installing the operating system on this virtual hard drive that I created. Now you're going to start to see it do its installation, and you may come across a few prompts where it's going to ask you to enter in some information or make a choice on time zone or keyboard. So I first one, choosing what keyboard you want to use. So I'm gonna stick with the English. Go ahead, hit continue. I'm going to do normal installation, download updates while installing Ubuntu. Not going to do any install any third-party software for graphics or Wi-Fi hardware. So we'll go ahead, hit continue. So here, what it's doing, it's looking to ask where we're going to, or how we're actually breaking down the hard drive. So since this is a brand new one, we're going to erase the disk and install Ubuntu. So that's not going to be a problem, because there's nothing on there currently or anything like that. Now, if I wanted to do other things like create different partitions for whatever reasons, so I can go ahead and have that done now rather than trying to do partitions and things like that later down the road, I can go and just click on something else and start to make those things. So be able to separate that 25 gigs or however big I made it into different partitions for whatever you were looking to use it for. So for me, I'm just going to leave as is and then go ahead and install. So go ahead and click continue. And then we're going to choose what we're going to stay with, the New York time zone. Hit continue. And you notice as we're answering some of these prompts, it's already starting to run through creating the hard drive or partitioning the hard drive and everything and starting the installation. So we'll go ahead, just like that first prompt when we were doing it on the VMware Player software, we'll go ahead and put a name in here. Now we'll pick our username, and this is going to be Linux user. So as I'm picking the username, is changing the computer name as with that. So if I want the computer name to be different, I can change that if I wanted to. But I'll leave it as that. I'm fine with whatever it makes it. No big deal. Go ahead and put a password. Now, I'm just going to have it set to log in automatically rather than having to log in every time I bring up the virtual environment. So go ahead, hit continue. So it's going to start going, continue to run through, copying the files, doing the installation and everything. So I'm not going to bore you by having this play. So I'll come back once it's done and we'll finish with installing the Ubuntu software. Now, once your installation is complete, it's going to ask you to go ahead and restart the system. So we'll go ahead, we'll click on Restart Now. Now, once it's done booting, it's going to bring you back to being able to start to set this up to go ahead and use however you choose. So it has some things where you can go ahead, log into various accounts, Ubuntu, Google, Microsoft, um, and then choose to be able to use Ubuntu Pro. And then if you want to be able to send information based on what's going on with the system. So normally most don't want to send that. Go ahead, hit next, and then that's it. Now you're done. So now you can start to play around with it, do whatever it is that you were looking to do for why you chose to install Ubuntu. You can go ahead and start using it as is. And everything. So it's a great idea to have, virtual machines, especially if you're just starting off in IT, because that's going to give you a chance to be able to play around with other operating systems, get yourself familiar with those and everything, without it affecting your host system. So definitely a good thing to know and to be able to go ahead and do. Hopefully you found this helpful, and I thank you for watching.